Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh. Our top stories for tonight: Trump says no plans to extend tariff deadline. The US president also denies engaging in talks with Iran. That's coming up on AWANI International. US President Donald Trump says he doesn't have plans to extend the 90-day tariff pause beyond the July 9th deadline. He instead would opt for sending countries letters detailing the trade penalties they face. Speaking on Fox News, Trump said those letters will outline tariff rates based on trade deficits and treatment of American goods, suggesting some cases may not need further negotiations. The US president had previously talked about sending similar letters in May and earlier this month, though negotiations continued. On Friday, Trump also downplayed the deadline, saying it would be difficult to strike individual deals with so many nations, despite his administration's goal of reaching 90 deals in 90 days. As countries scramble to make deals with the US, China, meanwhile, has issued a fresh warning, urging that its interests must not be used as bargaining chips. Beijing said it will take firm countermeasures if targeted and is calling for fair rules-based negotiations under the multilateral trading system. Over in the UK, tariff cuts for the automotive and aerospace sectors have come into effect. This is after Prime Minister Keir Starmer finalized parts of a deal to secure relief from US import taxes, easing trade tensions and safeguarding British jobs. UK car manufacturers exporting to the US will now face a reduced tariff of 10%, down from 27.5%. In the aerospace sector, a 10% levy has been removed entirely. However, a 25% tariff on steel remains in place despite earlier plans to phase it out. Talks are ongoing as the US seeks more clarity on British supply chains and ownership structures. The UK government is expected to update Parliament on additional trade terms, including ethanol and beef quotas. Under the agreement, a 20% tariff on US beef imports will be removed, as well as a 19% tariff on US ethanol. On to updates with the Israel-Iran conflict. Donald Trump denies engaging in talks with Iran, adding that he is not offering the country anything. The US president also reiterated his claims that Washington had obliterated Tehran's nuclear facilities.
His comments follow reports that his administration was considering helping Iran access up to $30 billion to develop a civilian nuclear energy program. Trump's claims also contradict that of an early US intelligence assessment suggested that US strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites had not destroyed the core components of the country's nuclear program and only set it back by a few months. The assessment was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon's intelligence arm. In response, Trump said he was considering forcing journalists who published leaked details from the report to review their sources. He added that his administration may seek to prosecute both reporters and sources if they refuse to comply.
Right, we have more after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Kelima mau datang lagi? Mungkin shampoo anda tidak 100%. Mari kita lihat. Gunalah Head & Shoulders menghilangkan kelimomo sehingga 100%, membasmi kegagalan, melindungi kulit kepala sehingga 48 jam supaya kelimomo dan kegagalan tidak datang lagi. Head & Shoulders.
Alami penstreaman serba baharu bersama Max. Kini dengan Astro Box baharu.
Awesome!
Guardian Leviosa. Bukan sekadar filem. Itulah kami. Serta rakan-rakan.
Hello, lovers.
Melangkaui kebiasaan.
Michael versus a white shark.
I'll accept the challenge.
Nikmati kehidupan sepenuhnya.
It's smelling incredible.
That's delicious.
Segalanya di sini.
Let's get this party started!
Tawaran masa terhad. Pelanggan Astro. Add-on Max dan jimat 50% untuk 12 bulan di My Astro. Max, stream terbaik dengan Astro.
Kaulah tuanku.
Welcome back. Israel carried out a wave of airstrikes across the Gaza Strip, forcing hundreds of Palestinian families to flee. The bombardment marks one of the largest evacuation orders issued since the conflict resumed in March.
It follows new evacuation orders to vast areas in the north where Israeli forces had operated before. Health authorities say at least 25 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Monday alone. Israeli officials, meanwhile, are due in Washington for a new ceasefire push by the Trump administration and further talks on Iran. Just a day earlier, US President Donald Trump urged an end to the 20-month-old war, calling for hostages to be freed. In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet is also expected to convene to discuss the next steps in Gaza.
The Kremlin has hit back at a proposed U.S. sanctions bill, warning that it could derail any chance of peace in Ukraine. This comes after Republican Senator Lindsey Graham reveals U.S. President Donald Trump's support for the legislation.
Graham earlier told ABC News that he's confident Trump will sign the bill once it passes through Congress. Voting on the bill, he said, is expected to begin following the end of the July congressional break. The proposed law would impose tariffs of up to 500% on countries that continue to buy Russian energy, like oil and gas. This could directly impact major Russian trade partners like China and India, which import large volumes of Russian energy. Russia is already facing sanctions from a wide coalition of countries, with the European Union now preparing to roll out its 18th sanctions package, which includes tighter restrictions on Russian oil exports.
Canada has scrapped its digital services tax targeting U.S. technology firms just hours before it was set to take effect late Sunday. It's seen as an effort to revive stalled trade talks with the U.S. President Donald Trump, who called off negotiations last Friday.
Trump pulled out of negotiations due to the tax, calling it a blatant attack. He also pledged to set a new tariff rate on Canadian goods within the next week, threatening to push back US-Canada relations. The now shelved tax would have impacted US technology firms, including Amazon, Meta, Google, and Apple, among others. Under the proposal, Canada planned to levy a 3% tax on digital services revenue earned from Canadian users, applicable to companies generating over $20 million annually. According to Canada's Finance Ministry, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump are expected to resume trade negotiations to strike a deal by July 21st. Canada had largely avoided Trump's sweeping tariffs introduced in April, but now faces duties of up to 50% on steel and aluminium exports.
Meanwhile, South Korea is seeking an extension to the 90-day pause in the U.S. tariffs, which is set to expire next week. According to a senior South Korean trade official, negotiations between Seoul and Washington are expected to continue beyond the deadline.
South Korea's new administration held its first senior-level trade talks with Washington last week. This was alongside a third round of working-level technical discussions since the two countries agreed to craft a trade package reducing U.S. tariffs before the temporary pause ends on July 9th. During the talks, the U.S. raised concerns over South Korea's non-tariff barriers, as the latter already imposes nearly zero tariffs on U.S. imports under a free trade agreement. The senior official also said issues of foreign exchange rates and defense costs are being discussed via separate channels.
Still on U.S. tariffs, Indonesia will ease import restrictions and rules on various commodities, including raw materials. Officials say this move aims to ease businesses ahead of the U.S. tariff negotiation deadline on July 9th.
The easing includes removing import licenses requirement for certain goods and lifting restrictions on some raw materials such as plastics and chemicals. Trade Minister Budi Santoso said the policy covers 10 commodities, including forestry products, fuels, and fertilizers. He added that the move will provide greater certainty for businesses by eliminating overlapping regulations. According to Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs Erlangga Hartarto, this will take effect in 2 months. According to the State Secretariat, President Prabowo Subianto has also ordered all ministries to ensure business licensing processes are not slowed by bureaucracy. However, officials did not confirm whether these measures are directly linked to the tariff talks with Washington.
China's economy is showing some signs of steady recovery, but the rebound is still on shaky ground. Factory activity saw their best performance of the second quarter in June, despite staying in contraction for a third straight month, as China grapples with weak demand and ongoing trade war with the US. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics showed Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) reached 49.7 in June from 49.5 in May, marking the second consecutive monthly uptick, while the non-manufacturing index hit 50.5 in June, also up 0.2 points from the previous month. A PMI reading above 50 indicates expansion, while below 50 reflects contraction. These modest improvements came after Beijing and Washington moved to de-escalate their tariff war in mid-May. So far, Chinese exports have remained resilient, with front-loading and stronger shipments to alternative markets offsetting a drop in US demand. But the world's second-largest economy still faces major challenges, including a prolonged property slump and persistent deflationary pressure. The Dalai Lama is set to address a 3-day gathering of religious leaders this week ahead of his 90th birthday. The spiritual leader is expected to share details of his succession in a move that could provoke China.
Beijing views the Dalai Lama as a separatist and has insisted it will appoint his successor. The 14th Dalai Lama had fled Tibet in 1959 after a failed uprising against Chinese rule. He has since said his successor would be born outside of China, urging followers to reject any candidate selected by Beijing. As he turns 90 this Sunday, the Dalai Lama announced he would consult senior monks and share insights on where his successor may be found after his passing. He has previously suggested that his reincarnation could take place in India, where he has lived in exile near the northern town of Dharamshala.
In other news, Britain, France and Germany have condemned Iran for threatening the head of the IAEA. They also urged Tehran to ensure the safety of agency staff.
In a joint statement, the three countries voiced full support for IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, but did not specify what threats had been made. This comes as Iran's Kayhan newspaper, closely linked to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, accused Grossi of ties to Israel's Mossad intelligence agency. The newspaper said that should Grossi enter Iran, he should be tried and sentenced to death. Iran responded that it could not be expected to guarantee IAEA inspectors' safety so soon after Israeli and US strikes on its nuclear sites during the recent 12-day war. Earlier this month, the IAEA board voted to declare that Iran in breach of its obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Bagheh said a parliamentary bill approved by the Guardian Council makes it mandatory for the government to suspend cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog.
That wraps up AWANI International. Stay tuned for reports on the rivalry strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more and be sure to follow our social media accounts at Power Affairs. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching and good night.